It's now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Tony Galati, Chief Executive Officer and joint owner of the Galati Group, and he's going to be joined by Harold Seeley to have a discussion. Now, when the Live Export Committee were joined, first looked at setting up this thing this year, one of the first names that was on the list that they wanted to hear about was Tony. WA, unless you've been living under a rock for the rest of your life, everybody would know who this guy is. Even though we don't know him personally, but everybody knows Tony because he affectionately known as the Spud King, because he won a lengthy battle growing and marketing potatoes in a organisation or an industry then that was very heavily regulated. So he knows all about dealing with regulation. Tony's come a long way from the family farm and market garden to establish more than a dozen spud shed stores and his own brand of potato chips, which some of you will notice is in your satchels. So thanks to Tony's generosity, we really appreciate that. Thanks, Tony. And so joining Tony on stage for the chat to talk about his journey and his passion for food security and the importance of WA's farming community. Joining him is Harold Seeley. Now, Harold's been in the industry for many years in just about every capacity. He knows the live export industry backwards. I think he also knows Tony, and he knows a lot about industry generally. Currently now working for Alinta Energy, but won't hold that against you. Your record is exceptional. So I'll hand over to you two for this fireside chat. Thank you very much, and thanks very much for joining us, Tony.
No problem.
Thanks, Terry. Well, it's not very often I get to sit beside an icon of WA. He's had a fringe festival named after him, and then it was that good it went round the state, Tony. But it's in context, I've known Tony for several years, but more from the time that I used to sit in rooms like this or stand in rooms like this in the evenings and do auctions, and the support that would come from Tony. In those days, I think he had 3 or 4 stores. We used to live at Baldivis in the feedlot, and you were our local store. And in that time, it's moved on. But you are part of WA folklore. It's an amazing story. It started in 2006. But before we sort of delve into that time that you weren't scared to take on the PMC, I think there's a few people in the room who are unaware of who you are. But just tell us a bit about your background, where you're from, the family. A bit of background, please, Tony.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, thanks for having us. My name's Tony Galati. I run the Spud Shed, the Galati Group operation with my family, my sons, and we started back. I'm a son of an immigrant, Sicilian parents, and we started as a little market garden, 5-acre market garden. We worked before going to school. I used to get up every morning and go and change the water on the sprinklers, because back then we didn't have automatic systems like we've got now. Everything was on taps. So every 30 minutes you got to go and change the taps. You get drenched, then go to school, and then when you come back from school we did the same thing. Used to help our parents. And that's how we started, on a 5-acre in Spearwood, and now we run about 2,000 acres of market garden. We've got 19 spud sheds, and we're in the industry, invested heavily with supporting food security for WA for the future. That's us.
Now, those early days were tough. There's no doubt about that. Your family...
Don't worry about the early days. It's still tough now.
But some of those lessons that come out of there that you've carried through that you learnt with your dad in the fields at Spearwood you're farming across the state from Kununurra basic to Manjimup as of tomorrow. Yep. That's a great achievement.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. My father, he was, he didn't have much of an education, and how it started back then with the potato board. Back then, there was a lot of immigrants that worked pretty hard, and they didn't have the language. They didn't have a tongue to speak, and they were abused by the guys at potato board. If you were in the club, and they wouldn't take your potatoes, and they completely got screwed over. And then, that was I heard about. My father always used to be a little bit upset how they treated them. And then when we grew up, and we all started growing spuds, and we knew there was a bit of a system, and we knew it was wrong. So then they tried to lean on us, me and my brothers, but it's in our DNA, we fight. And we knew it was wrong, and that's when we took them on.
So that come about, there was sort of the PMC, your first blew with the PMC, the Potato Marketing Corporation. I think it was 2010. I remember in the press you'd been fighting with them previously, you'd sort of had issues, but then you come out public in 2010 with the first of the free spuds. Was that?
No, I think it was earlier than that.
Earlier than that?
A lot earlier than that. It was in the late 90s. What happened was we were all growing Delaware potatoes, and then all of a sudden these new varieties of Nardine came up. And the Nardine varieties, we weren't aware, the first season we grew them, they took about 3 or 4 weeks longer than the Delaware. So we missed our pull. So we had about 1,000 tonne of spuds in the ground, and they wanted us to plough them in. Do you think I was going to plough them in? No. So I said, if you're not going to sell them, I'm going to give them away. And in the legislation, they didn't have that clause that we were allowed to give them away. But it didn't bother me anyway, I still would have done it. So that's where we started our fight with them. So we needed the ground anyway, so we harvested these spuds and we gave them away to the people, and that's how we started our fight.
So the PMC then challenged you on that, and you're obliged to them. They then issued you an injunction or court order that you weren't to grow potatoes. Is that the power that they had, that they could stop you growing?
They had so much power. They could virtually go into our properties. They actually, but it was so stupid. Lucky they probably did what they did, because the value of these spuds were only about $300,000, $400,000, but they invested nearly $500,000 in private investigators to keep an eye on us. At my own home, we had private eyes watching me at night time, when I'm going to bed, when I get up, watching our harvesters. It was just, back then it was lucky nobody got hurt. That's what I'm saying now. So in those days when you gave them away, the photos that we'd see in the West and so forth, there's hundreds and hundreds of people, but concurrently the two big shops, sales never dove away. It seemed completely irrelevant of what they tried to do, because there was a demand there for them to be taken, yet they tried to control what you're putting, or what you're growing. Well, absolutely. The thing is, they controlled the price. So me as a grower, back then I became a merchant as well. They were paying me $400 a tonne, and you virtually take them for a spin down to Fremantle, go on the weighbridge, and then buying your own potatoes back for about $800 a tonne. And that was so wrong. I said, well, the consumers really... And then they had this fallacy of price. The marketing was totally wrong. I said, this is not right. And this is where we started fighting them, and took a long time. But again, always becomes with politics. It wasn't what was right. It was the political potato who sat on either side. And that's what it became. It was the politicians got involved. Well, the guys down Mandurah, they were growing spuds and they were in politics, and what's going to happen?
Well, you had the court case, or you were going to have to defend yourself, and it was enough, and it was said that, I don't think there's any state secrets here, that it was going to be financially going to it will make it incapable for you to move on, and so Barnett could not do anything at that stage. But it wasn't until McGowan came in that they wiped that injunction, or that.
How it happened? Barnett virtually supported them because it was the Liberal Party, and they were. Most people in the room know who they are. Every time I think back, my blood pressure goes up. And they did a deal with Barnett, and then McGowan virtually promised me that because he knew it was wrong, it was just stupidity. If he got in, he would abolish the potato board. I lobbied so much, all people in businesses, and we, thank God, got a landslide. He got in, and he met his promises.
And it was, I remember, because 16 they made it defunct, and 17 they let that
September 2016. I'll never forget that month.
No, I don't think you would either. So, as we look back, you're a businessman, and then you advocate still. How do you advocate for fairness in farming? What is your
Well, we play a big role in the vegetable industry and fruit industry. You know, we're into the markets in Canning Vale. I support all the people in there, buyers and sellers, because we are, you know, we're big. We've got big stands in there, and we support the independents strongly, because we need that market to survive. Because if that market doesn't survive, then, you know, the chain stores don't want that market to survive. We need that market to keep it the equilibrium of the market system.
So that leads into the next thing. So you've done that. You've fought through that. You've had your small stores when you had the grocers, and then you started building Spud Shed. What inspired the creation of Spud Shed, and how did you differentiate it? What was going to be your method to market?
Well, what inspired me was that, like for instance, we supply the major chains. You go and grow 100 tonne of potatoes, and probably 60 tonne make the grade. The other 40 tonne, what do you do with it? Because we're big volume supplying them. So I had 40 tonne of potatoes. Really, we weren't going to dump them. We put them in the markets. You put them in the markets, and you're at their mercy. They know you've got nowhere to go, and you get screwed over. So I said, all right, I've got to do something about it. And that's how I started my first retail store. The thing is, they talk about waste. You know, you've got a potato that's got a little bit of a mark. And when you go to the chain stores, they want everything perfect. And as if you're farmers, you know what it's like. Nothing's perfect. But there's nothing wrong with the product. And we found a market for it. And that's how I started Spud Shed. Like, you know, you get an avocado, you know, it's got a bit of a mark on the skin. The avocado still tastes okay. You got a mango, it's got blemish. You don't eat the bloody skin.
No, it's ongoing. And I was with a group of cattle farmers the other day up north, and one of them turned up in his truck, and that harvested something like sort of 800 tonnes of carrots for the week, and through one of the sheds, they took 140 tonne and threw it out to the cattle. It was just complete waste, and that was ongoing for nearly a month, and there was nothing wrong with it. So the waste is huge, and I know there's a huge thing running through with food security and food waste now to stop that, because it's not just that 10 or 15 tonne that gets thrown out, it's the amount of water, fertiliser, energy and effort that goes into growing it. So that's the balance between affordability and sustainability. What do you do there to make sure that you can actually keep doing it?
It's exactly that. It's like, you know, we grow a lot of carrots. We probably feed about 150 tonne of carrots to our cattle and sheep and goats every week. You know, you got broccoli waste, you got leaves, you got everything, and that turns out. But also, again, you know, you grow 100 tonne of spuds, you sell 60 tonne to the chain stores, and the other 40 tonne you got to find your own market. So it balances, so you can make your average, and that's how you become, you know, sustainable.
Righto. So, with all of that, you've just opened Kalgoorlie.
Yes, we opened Kalgoorlie.
Geraldton's next, or Bunbury.
Geraldton or Albany, one of the two.
It's a great story. So, approach to farming today. Are you using technology, or how have you changed? Talk about the taps and the water and the irrigation. What have you done in regards to changing the way that you operate with such a big operation?
It's changed so much. Technology is very important. I'm not too much tech savvy. My kids, the boys, my young son Frankie, he's the CEO of the group. He's all over that. So he's always, and we've got another guy who consults with us, works alongside us. They're always out there looking at new technology, new varieties, and you got to be in front of the game all the time.
And you've said before that you support the markets and support those small producers, and it's tough when you take that drive and you drive up through Gingin and out through the sand. It's the big guys it's get big or get out, but are the small guys, have they got a future? How do we see that? How do we see the future for those small producers?
Well, if they specialise in unique lines that they can supply the market, yeah, there is a market for them. They can survive. But the thing is, it's very tough at the moment with new government policies they put out in farming. It's not easy.
So how do we get those farmers? Should farmers, and how should they shape food policy for the state?
Well, it's all to do with their marketing. They've got to understand who buys their product and find that niche market. If you're growing it in a big way, you got to find a market where economies of scale. Otherwise, if you haven't got economies of scale, it doesn't work.
So, you know, you're pretty straight up and down. You call it as it is. And
yep.
there's a set of values that you've had and maintained for that time. What do you want to pass on to that next generation of growers and entrepreneurs? What do you want to see come through? You know, you've got a young family coming through, they're in the business.
Yes, well, the thing is, in farming, you know, a lot of times if you're not born in it, you're going to have the passion. If you haven't got the passion, farming's not for you. And it's not easy. It's not for everybody. And it's long hours. And again, you know, we get a kick out of, you know, providing affordable food for our customers. And sometimes I think I know what I sell my product to the market, and then I see what my products has been sold, and it's so unfair.
And I suppose talking about the things, the way you've changed your business model. You're like, it wasn't that long ago you turned up to the yards at Muchet and started buying some sheep, and then all of a sudden you've got cattle, and as you said, you're feeding cattle and the cattle in your feedlot, and the waste is going there. What's that done to your business that now you have control of your red meat chain? Has that changed the dynamic again inside the store?
Absolutely, because, you know, again, you know, if you sit back and just give orders to these abattoirs or these suppliers, you can never guarantee what you've got. Once you get it in a box, you don't know where that animal come from. You don't know what it's been eating. You don't know, and the thing is, you don't know the age of it. So by us knowing the quality of our cattle, and again, it's extra work, but you know, you become virtually efficient, and you can compete because you can make, well, the margins we make is not a great deal, but that small percentage, what gives you the competing factor.
How good do cattle do on broccoli leaves, cauliflower and carrots?
Well, I become vegetarians.
Pre-flavoured. Mate, anybody coming to ag? What advice would you give them? Like joining this is the most fantastic industry that we've got. We feed people. There's nothing more stronger than that. What advice do you give young people coming into agriculture?
Well, if you're prepared to work hard, and you're passionate, and you enjoy being in agriculture, definitely there's a future.
Yeah. Now, just going to run through a couple of quick questions. What's one myth about farming you'd love to bust?
Well, one thing that I really like to bust is the waste that gets wasted, because you guys go to the chain stores, you see beautiful looking apples, but I guarantee that tree that provided that quality apple, probably 50 kilos of it probably went to waste or to juice, or they just left on the ground because they couldn't sell it. Because the chain stores, they're our main avenue of selling your produce. If you're not in those spec, you can't sell it. So a lot of food gets wasted. You know, in Australia, we've probably got the best standards in the world. I've travelled quite a bit, and I see some of the standards, the quality standards around all over the world. There's nothing that matches our standards in Australia in taste and look-wise.
Most satisfying moment of your career so far?
Well, what do you think?
I reckon
September 16.
You've beaten a few up. So
September 16, 2016.
Well done. And if you weren't an ag, what would you be doing?
I don't know. I never thought about that.
Been
I've been asked a few careers to jump in, but wouldn't suit my hours.
Yep. And your go-to meal. What's the go-to meal when you with your own produce? What's your favourite?
I usually take a few potatoes home and a few broccoli, a few tomatoes, and make a salad.
Yep.
Pretty basic. If I'm not cooking a steak, that's all I eat.
Beautiful, straightforward. Steak
Absolutely.
and salad and a bit of spuds. But before we wrap up, what's next for Spud Shed, and what for you personally? Like you've got this wonderful family behind you. Your sons are involved. The family's involved right through. What's next for Tony Galati and for Spud Shed?
Well, the thing is, we're investing heavily in farming, in the farming operations. We bought quite a few orchards to make sure that most people see the price of apples this year. And again, it's controlled by a few guys, and we had to bust that. And we had to have our own product, so we can control, prices and quality on our shelves. And again, if we're going to grow a ton of apples, we'll make sure that we sell probably 90% of it in different grades, so people can, we'll have juicing apples a lot cheaper, all different grades, so you can sell the whole crop.
And will you be using storage and so forth to maintain that?
Absolutely.
All the way
yeah.
through, that's the best way to
We're
do it.
building, some of the farms have got storage, but we are building new storage as we speak.
Tony, thank you for that. I'll just, Terry, are we right to take a few questions from the floor? Does anybody wants to ask Tony a few questions?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with that.
You, is there any questions from the floor? Thanks, John.
Thanks, David. Tony, how do you get community invested in what you do? I mean, you've created a brand for yourself in WA. How have you found getting that community involvement to, I mean, you can go to a darts competition and there's 20 Tonys dressed up. How have you found getting the community involved and behind you?
I don't really know sometimes, but it's looking after people and making a difference to, you know, so many people come up to me and they reckon that if it wasn't for us, they couldn't afford to eat healthy. And that gives me the biggest kick. And that's what we do it for. West Australians, they supported me when I fought the potato board. And it's like something I owe to West Australians now, that I've got to make sure that we keep that legacy going. And I've done it with my kids. Now, the next step is get my grandkids into it so we can carry it on further down the track.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Any further? One right here. Bindi. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Really interesting. One of the things in agriculture is there's a lot of family businesses. You've just talked a little bit about yours. If you could just give us, you know, what you think are the best parts about family business, especially in agriculture.
Well, family businesses are the only ones that really survive in most farming operations. You know, it's like myself, it was pretty hard for my kids when I grew up because I was working a lot of hours and I didn't really see them grow up. But now, working alongside them every day, you know, I see them every day, and then it's like, you know, the lost time that I had with them, I'm getting it back, which is, you know, really thank God for that. And keeping families together is, especially in farming, is very, very important.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, I have, on behalf of the industry, we have the history of the live export book. I think we only had about 6,000 of these left, so be able to give you all those. One did make 20 grand one day, but anyway. Tony, it's...
I'll auction it next time I have an event.
Tony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. We understand how busy you are. You settle the properties tomorrow, I take it, and if the thing in the press is true, so congratulations on that. Congratulations on your growth, and thank you for spending time with us here at LIVEXchange 25.
No worries, pleasure. Thank you very much.